Hi guys, hope you're doing well. This is going to be a video on a prophecy update for, well, right now just some things that are happening that I found very fascinating. And somebody quoted something that, I was watching an interview by Tucker Carlson. He was interviewing a gentleman named Prime Minister of Hungary, and he is named Viktor Orban. And anyway, he kind of coined the term, so I'm going to give him the credit for it, obviously. And I'll post a link to the interview that Tucker did. Did a great job on this interview, by the way. I thought it really brought out some interesting stuff. But in it, this president of Hungary, basically, he says, he coined the term new society. That this is the ideology that's driving a lot of the mass immigration and stuff that's happening, and the ideology that's taking place for this new society. And which tells you that, and he says the leaders, in essence, he says the political, I'll put words in his mouth, but in essence, what he was saying, and I'm using my own as he brought this out, obviously, not his words, but mine, that basically what they're doing is they have an intention, the leaders, the political elites, the leaders of Europe, have an intention to bring about a new society. That's how he quoted this as a new society, which tells you that there's an element happening, and the same thing can be said of America. I believe is happening throughout the West, really throughout the world in many cases. But we really see this happening where you see mass immigrations. Why they can't shut down the borders? Well, and some people are for it or whatever. As Christians, I try to be irrelevant to the topic overall, but. Trusting in the Lord, and that, the immigrants need to have shelter and food and so much too. But to have a controlled national entity, that God established at the Tower of Babel when he separated people by their languages, was in essence creating nationalism to secure and protect us against a global dictator, which ultimately we're going to see happening with the coming of the Antichrist. He's going to be a global dictator. They're trying to break down those barriers, those walls. And that's why I think this whole open border stuff is of the Antichrist, of Satan. And as we move closer in times, that's why we're seeing it, and that's why I'm doing this video. I think that what we're actually seeing in this new society that he coined the phrase of, which I'm definitely going to be using in the future here, in essence, it's New World Order, just with another term, new society. And this new society basically means tear down any walls, have this total immigration effect, and bring everybody together. Somehow you're going to have this new society that's going to be generated. One's based upon something that they're orchestrating. They have a element of strategy to it. They're scheming to create something that wasn't there. So I just look at it and I go, I made some notes here, but basically you have, in essence, if it's a new society and the political elites are in on it, or the elites are in on it, obviously they're the ones promoting it, then it tells you that it's not a conspiracy that's false. It's a conspiracy, but it's one that's real. And what's happening is that it's a deception, and it's basically to deceive people that they otherwise couldn't do out in the open. And now they're moving in this open kind of format, as they tear down walls, and they basically, people say, well, why can't you shut down this thing? Well, we can't pass the laws because of this reason. We can't enforce the laws because of we find out it's totally false. It's totally fake. They don't have any intention. They could if they wanted to. But the whole ideal of political correctness and everything that's going on where, somehow if you do anything, you're immediately labeled a racist or xenophobic or whatever it is. They use these terms to basically silence you and to make you where you're not a nationalist. You're not the things that, it doesn't mean you're not caring or loving. It doesn't mean it at all. It means that you need to have a national state that keeps bad people out of your country and bad ideologies. Ideologies that aren't necessarily compatible with the culture and the language of the people that are there. And it creates a lot of other conflict. And having this conflict out there allows for them to enact these laws. Why they don't enforce, why they're trying to shut down police and stuff. And all this other stuff that's going on. Well, there's ultimately, people are doing this, making these decisions, but they're being manipulated by the spiritual forces behind them. The spiritual forces that are active in their life, causing them to do these things that are evil. And ultimately what it is, you look at it and you go, well, there has to be the political element involved. You have to have the media involved in it. You have to have the social media is involved in it, obviously silencing and deplatforming people. You have the educational system involved in it. You have the entertainment involved in it, because they're doing the same thing. So when you start looking at this, you're talking about, it's thoroughly integrated into society, and it's in the higher levels of society, and the power elements of society. So the people who have the money, the people who have the positions, the people who have the authority, have government power, these are the ones who have enacted this type of ideology, that they've brought it in and snuck it into society so that they could basically, in essence, get people to do and prepare for globalization. And I think that's really what it is. It's going to be a new world order. It's the same thing that they talked about before, just a new spin, new society, new world order, globalization. And it's really in preparation for this coming world order that's going to rise up, as the Bible talks about. It's a final empire talked about that will ultimately be the beast empire that we talked about in the book of Revelation. So we'll turn to the book of Revelation real quick, and we just want to focus on chapter 17. And I've read this before, but we're going to focus on that one primarily. So this final beast empire is going to rise up, which means America ultimately will have to either morph or change, and parts of Europe maybe as well. But at the end of the day, I think America will definitely be one of the chief aspects of this final beast empire, head up ultimately by the Antichrist, which means that this Antichrist figure may well be a diplomat, political person at some point, if he's not already. I think he is involved in politics in America right now, and it'll merge with maybe elements of Europe, elements of other nations, but at the end of the day, 7 nations are going to rise up, powerful nations that will be this, and there'll be 10 leaders. So we're just going to read that real quickly, and it just basically says in chapter 17, it goes into this, spiritual, idolatrous woman referred to that rides on this beast empire, in essence, by the power of this beast empire. And basically, it's going to be a global religion, ecumenicalist type religion that's committed acts of harlotry, which will be centered in the city of Rome, as we know that. And how I know that is from verse 18, which says, the woman whom you saw is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So this woman, this false ecumenical harlot system that has committed spiritual fornication with the kings of the world at one time, will commit harlotry, speaking in the spiritual sense of harlotry, as it talks about in the Old Testament, that Israel would commit harlotry, commit acts of harlotry. It's talking about spiritual acts of fornication, as it were, where they weren't trusting in the Lord. That's what they're talking about. But anyway, it goes on to this, and it's talking about this woman who's a spiritual entity, and she's committing, one time she was, possibly the church, the Catholic Church, maybe, that seems to be. And then, in essence, it's heading up this global religion to believe and trust and worship this Antichrist figure, this beast that's ultimately going to come on the scene, that will ultimately turn on her and destroy her. It will destroy the city of Rome, as it talks about in verse 16 and 17 of chapter 17. But what we're going to focus on is just basically verses 8 all the way down to 13. It basically just says, the beast which you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go into destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, and this beast that's coming up out of this abyss, that's going to its destruction. Whoa, that was a big one. It's thundering. That's a big one. Wow. And he goes on to say, kind of perfect setting for this, isn't it? And he goes on to say that this beast, this Antichrist figure, comes up out of the abyss, as it were, the one that's indwelling I think this spiritual person, this person who's going to be indwelt by this entity that comes up out of the abyss. And he says, and those who dwell on the earth and whose name were not found written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will wonder when they see the beast, that he was and is not and is to come, will come. It says, and there is a mind which is wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains of which the woman sits. Obviously, we know that Rome sits on 7 hills, but so does others, like Washington, D.C. and others. And they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and another is yet to come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. And the beast which was and is not, and is himself an 8th, is one of the 7, and goes into his destruction. Ultimately, we know this beast, one is the Antichrist himself. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not received a kingdom yet, but when they receive authority as kings, which with the beast for 1 hour, these have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. Now we know this is going to happen, that this final empire is going to come, and it's going to have, again, 7 heads, again, leading to this. It kind of gives you like some kind of weird, in essence, talking about like you've got this beast that comes up. You can refer back where a little earlier, actually, where it says about these 7 heads and 10 horns. You know, it talks about history, and then it kind of seems to allude to the future aspect of it and what's happening right then and there. And it seems to be, in my opinion, that these 7 heads, going back to Daniel, really to get clarity or understanding, seems to say that there's going to be 10 rulers of some kind of multinational empire that will rise up, that will be culminated or assembled from 7 nations. That seems to seem what it's suggesting, and it's only going to rule for 1 hour, a very short period of time, but it'll be global in its rule. It'll have power, although there will be national states that will resist it and ultimately come to it. And how we know that is from other parts of Revelation, like chapter 13, where it talks about he's going to have total control of the world. We won't read them, but as you get into like chapter 9 and 14 and 16, where it talks about these kings of the east who will come, in essence, and cause him to have, concern about these other kingdoms that are coming against him, which shows you that there's still going to be national states, even though he'll have global dominion economically, to where people have to take the mark of his beast on a global level. There will still be these elements out there that will have their own national militaries and stuff like that, which is kind of what we see today, exactly what we're seeing transpire. So this new global society, new reset, as they like to talk about, you hear them talking about this reset. What do they mean by that? And this reset, I think, is we're going to see the demise of the dollar, and I think there's a planned event for the demise of the dollar, a planned event for the separating division of America, maybe. And this new reset's going to be one in which it's global, and it's really going to be a form of kind of global socialist, kind of really, when you get down to it, fascism. Really, where you have the government and private industry working together. And although they attack fascism so much, I think that's really what they're bringing in, a form of global fascism and global dictatorship, which will ultimately lead to the rise of the Antichrist and his complete authority and power over it. That will all culminate in a very short time span, which tells you there's a plan out there, a conspiracy, and it's being enacted. It's going to happen. That's what the Bible says. And this plan, this bringing about this beast empire that's going to happen, I think we're seeing that with this new society that he talks about, how they attack people who disagree with them on any level and basically try to destroy their society through bringing in this, opening the borders. And if you disagree with the opening of those borders, they attack you vehemently and try to destroy you as a person, which is what they basically done in this interview. It's what they've kind of done to pretty much anybody, what they did to Trump, what they do to other people, but this president as well, Viktor Orban. So you have to give him credit for what he's doing. And I'll post a link to it. I think it's really good, but yeah, just amazing what's happening, how close we are. If these things are happening, how close is the beast empire? How close is the rise of this final dictator, the Antichrist? He's probably on the scene right now, working in the shadows, as it were, in the back place. We probably know him by name. Who knows? But it's probably really close. And at the end of the day, he's going to be possessed by this being that comes out of the abyss, I believe, and empowered by that. And this beast, could be, who knows, But at the end of the day, got their own opinions on it, I guess. But at the end of the day, he's going to be empowered by this entity, and he will go out to deceive the world and masterfully take over it. And so I think the hour is very short. Time is very near for the Lord's coming for the church. So be faithful, be looking up, trust in the Lord, stay in the Word, and it's amazing times we live in. When you see these kind of things talked about by world leaders, it tells you we're probably not far off from this beast empire coming to rise, this new world order that will be an economic global event, but also one which will have real teeth to it in the sense of an army, a power, nations that agreed to come together, probably secretly, that are agreeing, hey, we're going to let the thing crumble. And then as it crumbles, and this whole pandemic and everything that's been going on is, I think, just accelerate those plans. And, pushing all these trillions and trillions of dollars that they're constantly pushing out there, I think is all part of it. Implode it, let's destroy it, inflationary, blah, blah, blah. Then let's bring in this new world order, new society, global reset that they keep talking about, and not realizing that they're a tool being used by Satan to bring about the demise and destruction of ultimately this world. And, and as we know it, they don't realize it, but light at the end of the tunnel is the Lord's coming back. But first comes a terrible 7 years of tribulation, and you don't want to be here for it. So anyway, amazing stuff that we live in, times we live in, that's for sure. It's absolutely amazing. We're very blessed in a lot of ways to be able to witness this, but it doesn't mean it's easy either. So trust in the Lord, stay in your prayer, stay in God's word, and stay safe. God bless you. We'll see you.